voluntarily giving up their time to actually try and do pieces of this lit review. So I think just even right from the very start, there was a collaborative, passionate impetus and appreciative impetus to this work back in 2006. That came up with 8 themes about what matters to older people living in care homes. So things like maintaining identity, creating community, these things came up as the 8 themes that matter to people. Plus the philosophy and principles of relationship-centred care, which is Mike Nolan's work around the fact that we have to have these 6 senses achieved for all of us to have enriched care environments, and that's the sense of security, belonging, continuity, purpose, achievement, significance.
Well done. That's all.
Is that all?
Yeah.
What he always said was, it's okay having these senses that I've just described, but how do you do them in practice? How do you have a sense of belonging, security for everyone? And what happened as a result of my PhD was practices like the caring conversations, the real use of emotional touch points, etc., became the ways in which we could breathe life into the senses.
The caring conversations I kind of keep. If I'm seeing somebody for an interview or for, say, sickness, absence or whatever, the caring conversations right behind their head, so I can remind myself what this is all about. It is about valuing people and supporting them as people and not just as folk who come into work. And it's been nice, that of it.
So there's something about, when you talk about stickability, there's something for us around, we've been very fortunate that we've had so many people through this. So there's a feeling, you know, even at the retreat when you came and you met with all the other managers who've been involved, there's a feeling that it's more than just us.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely something about how we work together grows us as a community of practice and as individual people. And I suppose I'm very mindful all the time, Nick, about some of the purpose of what this is about, which is about the workforce. That's your kind of underpinning thing here, and I would say that this has an incredible impact on the workforce. It's one of the My Home Life themes, actually, keeping the workforce fit for purpose. And how do we do that? By using the practices and the philosophy of My Home Life in order to do that.
But how are older people involved in your programme? And I kind of almost fell off my chair because I was thinking, so this was a very traditional notion of involvement whereby they come to like almost they thought they should have this almost external group of older people.
Like a forum.
Deciding on things. And I'm going, no, but in a way that's not what's happening in My Home Life. The very thing that's happening in My Home Life is we don't need that committee, if you see what I'm saying, I don't think. Is that what's happening is because you would always be asking, or you'd be trying to stop yourself, whenever you're coming up with a solution about something, you'd always be saying, gosh, we must find out what other people's perspectives are. So you're automatically asking residents and families and staff what they think about. We've just got a complaint about we've not got person-centred meal times. It's not up to you to decide how to change that. It's got to be about you asking other people. That would always be our first, and not only that, we'd be asking, our first question would be, when does it work well? So there's two things coming into play here. One is that we would automatically ask people that we might not have done before, but also we would ask people at the starting point would be, when is it working well?
You're going to commit yourself to, you know, if you're working for a year, I think that's terribly important because it does build relationships. And it does take you 4 or 5 sessions maybe to start getting comfortable and building those relationships and opening up. I think that's terribly important. The length is important.
Having the chance to fail, and if we don't get the chance to fail, I don't think we can learn. That's really important.
We talk about learning quite glibly. I love your phrase, potential learning, because until it's tested, you don't know. It's just a good idea.
And people hate coming to supervisions because it's like, what are we going to talk about? And that's where the tool or the practice about what's working well for you and how could you experience it even better was started to use by some care home managers as the focus of the conversation and supervision. It transformed supervision to the point that people were actually enjoying coming to it because there was different questions, the quality of it or the question was asked was different.
But if we're going to have personal outcomes, which we are, policy-wise, policy says we're going to have personal outcomes, and I agree with that, we have to have personal feedback.
You know, what I've got from today is I keep going back to relationships. Okay, for me that's the key for it, and I think we have to stop talking about hard outcomes all the time.
You're not willing to compromise. You're not willing to compromise on what?
On the idea of it being in any way target focused from, you know, a more strategic point of view, and I think the value of it comes from almost the bottom up, and I don't like to think of residents being at the bottom, but I think when it comes to targets, sometimes what's important to them and what matters to them is at the bottom of the pile, and it needs to turn the other way around.
We can then be more curious and ask the questions, like, so if staff were to say, or relatives were to say, or even residents say about mealtimes, you know, they're it's you know, it's a bit noisy at times. You know, what kind of noise is it? What is it that's, you know, we can ask the probing questions so that we can actually find out more about what it's saying. Asking the curious questions and then giving the feedback back, if you like, you know, to our staff, to the people that we're working with, so that we can do that more of the time.
The question is, what difference is it making to the bottom line?
What difference is it making to the bottom line? Are people getting, Christie said, we have less money, we want to deliver better service. Is this part of the answer?
Can I give you an example? Something I'd never done before. I know it seems like a novel idea to ask people what they would like to eat, but you know, in a kind of suppose a kind of normal view would be that we would design a menu, make sure they had 5 a day, make sure they had this, that, and the next thing, instead of actually asking people what they wanted. At lunchtime, we used to give them a large meal with pudding about 12:30. This was sometimes after having eaten a full fry up at 9:30, and maybe had a cake at 11 o'clock. Planned their menu around about what people had said. Had a smaller breakfast, a kind of lighter lunch and a main meal in the evening. Waste is still there, but it's came down. I had a meeting with the accountants about a month or so ago, and for the first year since I started working there, we've actually spent less on food than in previous years. So that was probably a saving of about £67,000 in the last year.
And something important I remember about that story, when we went through that, because I made you detail the outcomes of it, right, okay, so what were the outcomes? And the thing is, you know, you or Lindsay said, nobody lost weight. Right, and there was also some things around, folk weren't sleeping after lunch, so they could do more in the afternoon, they could do more activities, they were sleeping better because, you know, you used to go into bed on a fairly full stomach, so presumably a better quality of sleep. So there was some real fabulous personal outcomes, I think, that came out of that little piece.
I've got 150 bedded home to fill, and that's quite hard these days to fill a 150 bedded home. I've been doing it for 18 years. And I think, you know, for me, my home life is all about relationships. And it's very difficult to measure outcomes sometimes with relationships. But I totally believe that if you have got good relationships with your families, with your staff, with your local authority, with the regulator, the care inspector, that, you know, for me, my home life does that. And I'm nearly always full. I'm sitting at 97, 98%. I've got 148 residents this week out of 150. And when people come into the units, I want people to come in and say, by God, Belinda runs a good unit in here. What is it about Belinda's unit? And I think it's to do with relationships. And so we use the tools at unit level, you know, like the quick feedback sheets. You know, how do things go well today, Belinda? You know, what can we do together better to make it even better? You know, let's have a huddle. Let's see how the shift went. And if you build relationships at unit level, and get 5 separate units, you know, people will come in and say, wow, God, Belinda's running a really good unit. And it's very difficult sometimes to see what Belinda's doing, but I think it's all to do with relationships and having happy staff, building relationships with other people as well, and that brings people in.
The 4 days that I was at altered me quite a lot, and I think the thing that I really noticed was that the way the programme's structured really helped people to not listen but hear. It burst assumptions. It made you have to actually think about what assumptions do I make as a person about myself and about other people and about within my team, and about, as you said, Denise, about losing that control a bit and being comfortable with being uncomfortable, as some of you else said. And I think being open to surprises.
The way that I would use the 7 C's or the images would be entirely different from Denise and Gavin would be using them, because they're non-prescriptive. So you do put your own DNA into it.
My home life is about doing good practice. It's not about good practice, it's about bringing good practice to life. So we get, care home managers and other people get given a lot of information, they're bombarded with information, and they're good people, but they don't have a lot of time to read it and to take it all in. And I think what My Home Life does, it gives you a way of taking all of that and putting it into practice. So that's just transformative in its potential.
So, in a way, how have you found today?
I found today very emotional, very enjoyable, and very kind of effective in as much as that I moved tables and sat at a different table earlier, and it was actually very nice to see what everybody else had got out of today, who weren't involved in My Home Life. I spoke to one of my colleagues in the care inspectorate who gave me his opinion on things, and had said that he'd actually been into some of the homes that had participated in My Home Life and had seen changes. Seen changes in staff attitudes and things, so that was very pleasing for me to hear. Well, I think it's kind of, it can go anywhere we want to take it. It can go any place you want it to be. I think it's limitless. If people have the enthusiasm and want to get on board and follow the My Home Life concept, it has endless possibilities.
This morning's raised awareness, and I appreciate the challenges that the care home managers have been doing to change patient-centred outcomes.
NHS is all about the values now, so you can transfer to the patients, and it's not just the patients, it's the relatives as well, so you can use everybody involved. We're busy thinking about ourselves a lot of time, but you've got to think about the fuller picture, I think.